Everyone has a story. And if you have ADHD, your story is probably a bit long and a bit strange, just like mine. How else do you explain the fact that Ted Bundy led me to my ADHD treatment plan? You can't make this stuff up. It's just too strange to be real. But it is. And that's what we're talking about in this episode, the ADHD journey. Mine to be specific. Hey guys, welcome back to ADHD is the New Black, the best black channel on YouTube about ADHD. So I created this channel to give those of us with ADHD, specifically black women and women of color, a safe space to feel seen in your life lived with ADHD. I've talked a lot about my ADHD on other people's platforms, in podcasts and blogs, but it occurred to me very recently that I haven't really shared my story in my own platform. I mean, I've referenced to my ADHD journey and my treatment. I've referenced how I've come to this place, but I haven't really shared with you the full story. And you deserve that. You deserve to know that whatever your ADHD journey looks like, it's normal. All of our stories are different, but so similar. Now, the most recent opportunity I've had to talk about my ADHD, because I love talking about my ADHD, was on a podcast hosted by Tracy Otsuka. It's called ADHD for Smart Ass Women. And if you haven't checked that out yet, there's a link in the description below, but don't go there right now. ADHD for Smart Ass Women. Tracy is an amazing podcast host. She always asks, what is your ADHD journey? How are you diagnosed? My treatment journey began 2 years ago at the top of a ridge on a morning hike with a prayer to our Father God to show me some tools to improve my quality of life. And the answer to my prayer, well, that's where Ted Bundy comes in, but we'll come back to that in a moment. But let's talk about my diagnosis story first. Why was I diagnosed? That's where the really interesting story starts. When I was about 24, 25, I didn't even know I was seeking a diagnosis. I just knew that I was effing up at work.
Sorry, it's DJ.
It was suggested to me by my supervisor, you need to talk to somebody. So I did. I sat down in front of my psychiatrist. I told her about the troubles I was having at work, that I was just forgetting to turn in things that were very detail oriented. Sometimes I'd turn them in, sometimes I wouldn't. I wasn't deliberately not turning in these details. It was just sometimes I would remember, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I'd turn in all the information, sometimes I'd turn in some of the information. Sometimes I'd turn in
none of the information.
Yeah, hi.
And I couldn't figure out why everybody was so uptight about it. It was to the point where people weren't trusting that I could actually do such simple work. You've heard the devil is in the detail, right? That is so true with ADHD. And if you're the inattentive type, which I am, details have always been so difficult for me, and I didn't realize that until I entered the workplace. The psychiatrist, she suggested that I might have ADHD. She did prescribe a medication to me, but here's the thing. No matter what medication that you're prescribed, if you decide to take medication, it's not a magic pill. It's not a magic bullet, and that's all you got to do is take it. Bing! I'm cured. I'm thinking all of my problems at the office are going to be gone, and they weren't. I didn't have enough information about ADHD or medication at that time to know what to expect from the medication, to know how to optimize the medication. I started to think, these pills don't work. Well, I guess I just don't have ADHD. This is something I'm going to grow out of. Maybe I'm just in the wrong job, or maybe I'm just in the wrong city. So I went on the path of that particular career for the next 6 or 7 years. And when I think about it, if I'm honest with myself, I thought I was running towards something at the time, but I was really running away from myself. Every single job, every single market, I had the same issue. The inattentiveness, the inability to be consistent with turning in the details. I was really just doing the best that I could. I got to the point where I was about to be fired from pretty much every job, and I would move on right before that would happen, thinking that, oh, the next market's going to be better. The next job's going to be better. Well, it wasn't just the details I was having trouble with. It was also interpersonal relationships. In my mind, it was me. I was about to lie. In my mind, it was them. No, it was me. I must be the problem. If I'm having the same issue with different people in different cities, clearly I either wasn't socialized well, I even went to the point of insulting my parents and thinking I must not have been raised well. Oh, it's disgusting when I think about it. You hide so much of yourself when you are very well aware that it's only a matter of time before you make the same screw ups. And once you start making those same screw ups more than once, more than twice, more than your grace period that people will allow you, then you know they're starting to think, what is with this girl? Is she stupid? What's her problem? Is she the minority hire? The token black girl. That's what I was thinking. They must have needed another black girl, so they settled for me. I didn't understand that I had specific challenges that weren't being addressed. In the early 2000s, I switched careers, the first of many times since then, and moved to New York City, and found very quickly that those same issues presented themselves again, just in different environments and different types of work. Because of the circumstances of the time, I was working as a waiter. Man, waiting tables, it's all about the details, remembering things, writing down things accurately. I was a so-so waiter. I was so-so. The best part about me being a waiter, I'm very good with people. So when I screwed up people's order, I could usually just charm my way out of it. Okay, we're not gonna write a strongly worded letter to the manager. We just won't tip her. The whole details thing, that came back to bite me. Yeah, within whatever environment, I would just kind of shapeshift and adapt to the environment. Just out of fear of not being liked, of being criticized, I would just kind of go with the flow and, just behave in ways that everybody else was behaving just so I could just, fit in, because I've never really fit in anywhere. When I moved to LA, same thing. A series of not very well thought out choices. I got married, I got divorced. I just remember 2 years ago, I felt like I was completely out of runway, if you will. Like I was at the end of all hope. I thought that everything that I thought I would be was impossible to achieve at that point. I was like a mystery to myself. I'd always had this sense that I had all the puzzle pieces. I just didn't know how to put them together. I was hopeless. I was so hopeless that I'm not going to say I contemplated suicide, but I was in a mindset where I understood why people would want to. That's where sitting on a cliff on an early morning hike one day turned into a prayer for change, for answers, for a better way that led me to... I in no way mean to diminish the horrible things that he did, but this is part of my story and I'm going to tell it. When I made that prayer that morning to God to show me a way to fix whatever was wrong with me, that very evening I had started binge watching the Ted Bundy tapes, a documentary on Netflix. Oh, Ted Bundy, what was his story? One episode turning into watching all 4 of them. As I was watching, everyone who knew Ted Bundy personally, the one thing they kept saying about him was, he had so much potential. What happened to Ted Bundy? Ted had so much potential. He had so much potential. He had so much potential. And these were the things that I kept saying to myself in my head throughout the years. Stacey has so much potential. This is my inner voice, by the way. Stacey has so much potential. What happened? What happened? She has so much potential. Then would Ted Bundy speak about himself and his impulses that he couldn't control, which led him to murder because he was a psychopath. But when he would say things like, I couldn't help myself. I was driven to do it. I had such a compulsion. I couldn't stop myself. That resonated with me too. Not in violence, but just in general. It was like I was always finding myself doing the things I didn't want to do, things that I knew that were bad for me, the impulse control issues. All of these are classic ADHD symptoms, by the way. Specific examples, not being able to stop an activity when I knew I needed to leave and be somewhere on time. Just the compulsion to finish what I started. Oh no, I started this, I gotta do it. Like an activity or cleaning or just almost a compulsion. And that was the part of him that resonated with me. I empathized with him. I was so obsessed with trying to diagnose Ted Bundy after this documentary finished. I'm thinking, wow, why am I empathizing with Ted Bundy? That's weird, right? I went online, again, trying to diagnose Ted Bundy. I started looking for terms like, could Ted Bundy have been helped with medication? What did Ted Bundy have? What was wrong with Ted Bundy? Among the other psychological issues that it is believed he had, one of them was ADD, or now we know as ADHD. And in that being one of the alleged or apparent diagnoses, I fell down the rabbit hole and landed on the website called Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Not on their homepage, but on their self-diagnosis page. This is not me looking for ADHD information specifically because I had completely forgotten about my ADHD diagnosis. from my 20s. I literally did not give a second thought to my ADHD diagnosis all those years. Now I'm looking at the self-diagnosis test. I check every box but one. This is my answer. This is what's wrong with me. Again, forgetting I'd already had this diagnosis, by the way, 20 years ago. Because I was ready to receive that information. And that's the thing. You have to be ready to receive information about yourself to do something about it. So I'm certain of it. The answered prayer was the Ted Bundy documentary, which led me down a rabbit hole to a self-diagnosis test on an ADHD website. After reconciling that this is me, now my current therapist wasn't so sure about my discovery because we'd never talked about ADHD. But then in a flashback, while talking to her, I remembered receiving my diagnosis when I was 26. All of the loose ends, the unanswered questions, the missing pieces, the inconsistencies, just the big question marks about my character, my personality, my behavior, my choices, it all crystallized together. And that is when I realized I can do something about this now. I can keep living like this, or I can change my life. And I decided to change my life. And I didn't care how I got the medicine. I went to every doctor I knew that I was being seen by, and my internist prescribed me the medication. I now have an ADHD coach, and I can tell you nothing's perfect. Nothing ever will be perfect when you have ADHD or when you don't have ADHD. But my life today, I don't even know how to quantify this. All I can say is a full 180 than it was 2 years ago. So that's my story. No matter what your story, don't be ashamed of it because it's your story. This is your journey. And no matter where you are on your ADHD journey, whether you decided to talk about it, put it out there in the world like I chose to do, or whether you've decided to keep it to yourself, that's okay. Just make sure that the silence isn't shame-driven, because there is nothing shameful about having a beautiful, neurodiverse brain. Because here's the thing, this whole story I've told you about my journey, that illustrates the nonlinear thinking of an ADHD brain. I can make a prayer about something that I didn't even know what the problem was, and somehow, through a serial killer, be connected to my treatment and rediscovery of my diagnosis. I just want you to know that you are absolutely beautiful. You are normal. Your behavior is normal for an ADHD brain. Don't ever let anybody, no matter how much you love them or not, or how much you think they love you or want them to love you, don't ever let them tell you that the things that you say or how you do things is wrong or not normal. I've heard these things before, and it's bullshit. We do things that may look weird to other people, but makes total sense to us, and it has a better result, a more desired result, a more creative result. Just because something hasn't been done in the way that we do them doesn't mean that it's wrong. The only reason I started this channel was to let you know that you are not alone in your challenges. Seek out people who know you and love you anyway. That's anybody, but sometimes there are some extra things about us to be loved. And seek out the people who, whether they know you have ADHD or not, they love you. If you think this channel is important and needed out there in the world for women like us, then go to my Patreon page and show your support. Like these videos so that they can get in front of more people who need this information, who need this type of community and encouragement and sisterhood.